welcome back to the Zig Zone, WBGU 88.1 FM's show with your home for everything going on in Bowling Green Falcon Athletics. And there's been a lot to talk about since the last time we've been on here. So I'm Holden Ruck, your host as per usual, and joining me are three of our Falcon Media Sports Network analysts. First off, Mr. Chaz McNeil. Chaz, how we doing?
Doing phenomenal. Happy Thanksgiving, belated, and happy early Christmas. Bowling Green Volleyball fell in the MAC tournament last week, and they're looking for an NVIC bid right now.
Mr. Sean Connolly, one of our football experts. Sean, how we doing?
Good after the Friday loss, emotional loss for Bowling Green against Miami.
And kind of a staple at this point. You're pretty much here every week.
Yeah.
Mr. Ben Korak, how we doing, buddy?
Yeah, it's hockey now today. The Falcons had not a great first game on the weekend, but finished it out pretty strong. Electric atmosphere yesterday, and the shootout win. We'll talk about it in probably an hour, but, stick around for hockey.
All right, first and foremost, we're going to jump into some men's basketball action with our own Tyler Kavelitz calling in. But before we do, we're going to briefly step away for station identification. You're still listening to the Zig Zone on WBGU 88.1 FM.
Hey everyone, Falcon Media Sports Director Lucas Kleinmeyer here. You're listening to WBGU 88.1 FM, home of the Falcon Media Sports Network.
Welcome back to the Zig Zone. We're going to go ahead and jump into talking about the Falcon men's basketball team with our own Tyler Kavelitz. Can you hear me, Tyler? Yeah, I think we got you now.
Beautiful.
All right, so take us through what's been going on with the team.
Yeah, so pretty eventful weekend for the men's basketball team. They went west for the Arizona tip-off. Had a couple of matchups there in Arizona. They fell in the first game against Weber State. It was a four-team kind of tournament invitational format, so they got sent down in the third-place game. Got a pretty tough draw matched up with a New Mexico State team who came into the tournament with a winning record on the season, but they came away with a 1-point victory, 61-60. It didn't go down as a away victory because it was a neutral site, but their first victory outside of the Stroh Center this season, something they really needed, a victory that's going to hopefully get them back on the right track. So now they sit at 3-5 instead of coming back 2-6, which would have been pretty tough for them. But now just only 2 games under 500, and they seem to be getting back on the track, playing more like a team.
Yeah, and really after, looking at a couple of losses that they'd certainly like to have go a different way, it does feel like, something you can build momentum off of for the team, definitely.
Yeah, and the Weber State loss wasn't a loss like you had against Bellarmine. It was a 3-point loss, came down to the final possession. You had Marcus Johnson take, albeit a heavily contested, but a 3-point shot at the end of the game, a chance to tie it up. So I think it was the best weekend in terms of learning for this team so far. They were shorthanded going into it, but they got back-to-back games that came down to one possession. They got to play through those scenarios. They learned from not winning the first one, and they were able to come up with defense to win the second one. Derek Butler getting the block at the end of the game to get the win against the Aggies.
And you talk about that second one, that win against New Mexico State, also worth mentioning. Todd Simon's 150th head coaching collegiate win. Sort of a... Yeah,
very big achievement for him. I think they said 8th youngest active head coach to achieve that mark. So pretty big achievement for him, testament to what he's done building the programs he has, first at Southern Utah, and then the turnaround he's building here at Bowling Green.
Another thing I want to look at, because I feel like it's kind of been the notable story with this team for the season, and it was no less true in the win over New Mexico State. How about Marcus Johnson? Talk about him.
Yeah, you have other guys that have stepped up this season, but this offense really seems to run through Marcus Johnson. He struggled against Weber State just a tad bit. 8 points, 3 for 15 shooting, and they didn't win that game. However, he was the Marcus Johnson that we've seen against teams like Michigan State when he faced New Mexico State. Team high 23 points, 7 for 13 from the field, made 2 3-pointers, went perfect from the line. He's actually only missed 1 free throw all season. Went back and looked through that. He had 5 rebounds, 3 assists, had his best defensive performance of the season, had 3 steals. Second half, he was huge defensively for Bowling Green to make some runs and really stay ahead instead of catching up most of the game. He's just the center point of this Bowling Green team. If they are going to keep racking up wins like they hope to, a lot of it is going to be because of the play of Marcus Johnson.
Yeah, it certainly seems in the young season that we've had so far that is, in fact, the case. So the team gets back to action at the Stroh Center this Saturday against Morgan State. What would you expect to see? What do you hope to see? What do you think you'll see going into that one?
I haven't dug a ton into the Morgan State team just yet, but I know for a fact they are not a pushover kind of team. It is going to be a tough matchup. I think it's going to be good, though, for the team to get back to the Stroh Center. It's good to get the experience in these tournaments, but it's always nice to play in front of a home crowd. But I think the more important thing for this team is going to be to try to get some sort of consistency going. I think that's what they've struggled with the entire season for the main part. I think is you haven't had them have back-to-back victories yet. That's still a thing that has not happened with this team. So now Morgan State, they are 4-6 overall, but they only lost to Buffalo by 9 points, so they can contend with MAC teams. They're coming off of a win over Central Pennsylvania College, albeit, but they had 123 points in that game. So they do have a high-powered offense. They don't have an away win yet, though. So this is a big opportunity for this Bowling Green team to put together back-to-back wins for the first time this season. And something else to note, last season when that Bowling Green team under the first year of Todd Simon really got their all the cylinders firing for the first time was during that December stretch. They went on a huge winning streak in December last year that propelled them to being first in the MAC going into conference play. I don't think they'll get to that position, but they have a chance here to replicate what they did at the end of non-conference play last year and go on a kind of run to build momentum going into conference play.
Tyler, you mentioned consistency, and there's two reasons that I think that's something to look into, because the next 3 games I see on the schedule right now, all on Saturdays, meaning you have 6 days in between each game that you play, which is good practice time as well, but you know as well as I do, it's tough to generate momentum when you're not playing games like you do in the MAC when you're playing Tuesday, Saturday all the time, and you can kind of get the guys, the juices flowing every couple of days. But also you mentioned to be some injury problems, especially with Kayat and Towns, some big men injury problems as well, which we've already talked about being a little bit of the focus of this team as well. What is your opinion on these big rest weeks, 6-day rest weeks between Morgan State, Kansas City, and St. Thomas, and then a short week going into Aquinas, but then a longer week going into Akron?
I think normally I would say I don't love it, but with the state of the team right now, I think this is just what they need. They've already had some of that. Simon talked about it after the Niagara game, that they kind of tried to replicate MAC play with the Michigan State-Niagara scheduling. They faced Michigan State on a Saturday, faced Niagara on a Tuesday. That's what you're going to see, kind of that span in between games for MAC play. But now, like you said, the injuries that this team is facing, Greg Spurgeon's been in a boot for a week or two. Sam Towns, don't know the update on him. He don't know when he got injured, but he hasn't played the past few games. Yusef Kayat, Yo-Yo left with an injury a couple games ago. We don't know the status on that one, but he hasn't played. So then, of course, you're down other depth guys like Elijah Adem. We know what happened with him, the tragedy in the offseason, so he's not currently with the team. So they're down 4 or 5 guys right now. So you're looking at they've only had an 8-9-man rotation this whole weekend. So I think the rest is exactly what they need. I think they need that time to get healthy. They've already had a few of those close distance time games throughout the start of this non-conference schedule. So I'm not too worried about that time in between the games.
Yeah, and another thing that I think we're getting into now is a similar thing that we had with women's basketball as well. And Towns and Kayat hurt. Depending on how long they're going to be out, you're looking to the guards a lot more, which I think have been the blessing of this team, especially Derek Butler. Actually, I'll give you credit. You called it I think a week ago before they head into this tournament that Butler was going to take a step forward. I think he did in the last 2 games. I think you'd agree with me with that. I am really high on Javante Campbell. I really like the way he plays. Trey Thomas is going to be a mainstay. He's going to be Trey Thomas. Braylon Green doesn't look bad when he hits the floor. A lot of these guards for men's basketball is taking a big step forward, even with some depth problems in the big men.
They have. And I was waiting for someone to say Derek Butler's name. I think he was the MVP of the weekend. I think he was the key piece for this team over the weekend. Leading scorer in the loss to Weber State, had 16 in that one. And then he had 15, second leading scorer to Marcus Johnson, 15 and 5 rebounds, along with 2 assists, and then a game-winning block, game-sealing block to end that one. So I think Derek Butler was the star of the weekend. I know Marcus Johnson, his name will probably come up first because of the flashy three-pointers and the 23 points, which credit to him, it should. But I don't think they come away with that win without Derek Butler. And yeah, Javante Campbell, he's been kind of a spark plug for this offense all season long. Double-digit scoring points in both games. He's a guy that you kind of rely on to get a lot of your points when you need that offense to get jump-started. And, yeah, I'm really high on guys like Braylon Green. I think as he continues to get more minutes, you're starting to see him get more comfortable. Another guy I feel like that's going with is Jemai Felt. 30 minutes he had against New Mexico State. We're finally starting to see guys like Braylon Green, guys like Jemai Felt get those minutes, get more comfortable in the offense, and have an impact for this team.
Yeah, Tyler, you mentioned just now the offense and all the players just kind of getting more comfortable. We know that a lot of these guys, kind of Todd Simon signatures, that he brings in guys from JUCO and develops them. And with the injuries that we've also had to this team, how important is it to get guys Division I reps in games before MAC play?
I think that's extremely important. They need those reps before you go into MAC play. This team's going to need to have depth in MAC play. You're hoping they can shake off the injury bug and get through all of that before conference play. But for guys like the Jemai Felts, the Preston Squires, the Braylon Greens, even the Woogans Junior Exacts who missed all of last season with an injury, it's vital right now for them to get the reps against these non-conference opponents and just get action on the floor, get comfortable with the systems to be able to be a much bigger impact when you're facing MAC opponents in games that truly matter.
Something that sticks in my mind a little bit, because it's admittedly one of the teams that I've had less time to, really engage in and familiarize myself with, is, as we've talked about, and it's no secret to anybody who's been following the team, the number of new presences to the team. A lot of new guys, a lot of transfers. Do you think, in terms of inconsistency for the team, it is more? Do you think it's more of an issue of players needing to play more consistent individually, or players needing to learn how to play together better? Do you have a take on that, Tyler?
Yeah, I think it's more to the second point that you had there. I think these past 2 games were the best 2-game stretch this team has had in terms of playing as a team together. They didn't shoot the ball great in either game, but they were able to keep one of them close and win the other one. For most of the rest of the season, if they haven't shot great, they've really been blown out in a lot of those games when they do lose them. So I think it was just a matter of a lot of new players trying to find a way to gel with each other and learn their roles on this team. And I think that's starting to develop a lot more. It's also Todd Simon messing around with the minutes. He's messing around with rotations, trying to figure out where to get these guys playing time and who to put them on the floor with, all that kind of stuff. So I think it was just growing pain wrinkles that I think this team got lucky in avoiding a lot of it last year, just because of the scoring of Marcus Hill and I think a weaker non-conference schedule. But I think it was just growing pains for a young team with 10 new players that they just have to overcome, and I think you're starting to see them come on the other side of it right now.
Another thing I want to ask you, Tyler, you look at the team, and even though he's certainly not the only contributor, as we've said, it feels like kind of the face of the team right now, and the dominant force has been Marcus Johnson so far. Beyond him, if, you had to look to somebody that you think is, next man, or, if he's not having a good game, will step up to, keep them in it, who do you think that guy is for the Falcons?
I think it can vary game by game, but I think right now, I would probably go with Javonte Campbell. I think Derek Butler's another guy who can assume that role, but I would have to go with Javonte Campbell as the solid number 2 scorer for the team right now. That's where he is in terms of points. He was the one at the start of the season that Bowling Green was getting all of their points from. It wasn't Marcus Johnson right away. It was Javonte Campbell those first 2 games who really stood out for this team. He's so good at driving to the rim. He had a tough game against New Mexico State, but still found a way to put up 15 points because he's very good at getting the free throw line. He got to the line 11 times this weekend and made 10 of them. So, I was looking at Butler there. He got to the line actually 18 times. So with Javonte, if he can continue to be that force that drives into the rim, while Marcus is that guy that kind of stays on the outside for the most of the time, I think if one of those guys has an off game, the fact that you have the other that does something completely different to pick this offense up is very good for this team.
Certainly seems like a good thing to have if your seemingly star player can't keep his level of play at his best at all times. One last thing I want to ask you, it's certainly hard to forecast, a full month of schedule in advance, but from what I'm looking at here, Bowling Green opens their conference play on January 3rd. It's a home game against Akron. They also have matchups against Aquinas College, St. Thomas, Kansas City, and of course that Morgan State game prior to then. What do you hope to see from them, aside from just obviously winning, by the time that conference opener happens?
I would like to see first the team get healthy. I think that's a huge thing for them to be healthier going into conference play. But in terms of actual play on the court, I think I just want to see them be more as a team. I want to see them play more like they did in the last 2 games of the Arizona tip-off, but shoot better, that kind of thing. If they can find a way to play better as a team than they have during some of this inconsistency through non-conference so far, but keep that shooting at the level that it's been at a lot of times, I think you could be looking at a dangerous team because their defense, it's been a little weaker recently. It's still a very good defense. And when you look at the numbers, the shooting is still very efficient for this team. They're 5th in scoring in the MAC. They are 4th in field goal percentage, and they're 2nd in three-point percentage behind John Gross's Akron team. So if they can continue to evolve and play more as a team and less as individuals out there wearing a Bowling Green jersey, I think that's what I want to see over the final 4 games of non-conference play.
All right, well, we'll have to look ahead and see what they are able to do over the next month before that important conference play begins in January. Tyler, thanks for calling in, man.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yep. All right, so that is going to do it for today for our men's basketball coverage. And now we are going to pivot into women's basketball. And our Falcon Media Sports Network director, Lucas Kleinmeyer, is going to be on the line momentarily. Lucas, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Just driving back to BG.
Right on. Good place to be. Good place to be. All right. So women's basketball sitting at 4-4 right now after a little road trip. Take us through what's been going on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can really overstate how big those wins were in Daytona. Obviously, it's still early in the season, but they were 2-4 heading into the tournament in Florida. Couple of big losses against Ohio State and West Virginia. But they matched up very well against Stetson, in Arkansas. Both games were really completely different. Stetson, they kind of blew out. They matched up pretty well against them both offensively and defensively. They won pretty much all phases of the game, pretty much everywhere on the floor. They took care of business. And then Arkansas, obviously an SEC team, very tough opponent, coming in with a good record. They played a lot of good teams, so Bowling Green knew how big of a game that was going to be. And they also knew how big of an advantage they also had in the paint. And they actually used that to their advantage. And that's pretty much ultimately decide the outcome of the game if you look at both games. Erica Porter having 20 points and 18 points, so 38 points on the weekend, is definitely the most positive thing you could take away from the tournament. You still hear me, Holden?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah. But Erica Porter, she had her 2 best games of the season by far, and she was someone that kind of needs to beat that third wheel with Velasco and Kohler. But Porter was fantastic, especially down low, and that's really good for her individually and for the team, because she needs to get her confidence back, and I think she probably has with both those performances. But also Paige Kohler was incredible from 3 yesterday. She was, I believe, 7 for 9, I want to say. From beyond the Rizzo, that was 7 for 8. I don't have any stats or anything right in front of me, but she had a great shooting day. The entire team had a good shooting day besides the second quarter. That whole Arkansas game really was a giant roller coaster. They started out slow, but they came out in the second half and really got back into the game. And that's a performance that you can really take with you heading into MAC play. And I think we talk about it. I don't know if you guys talk about the men's team yet, but the non-conference games for both programs is really just to see what works and what doesn't. And then just figure out your starting 5 and figure out what you like tactically and make adjustments. Because MAC play is really where you're going to get into NCAA tournament, obviously, if you get into the tournament and win it. So, this is just an overall very positive weekend for the team. Got 2 big wins, and got Xavier coming back to the Coast Center, so they're finally home after a long road trip, Daytona and Ohio State and West Virginia. So they're looking forward to coming back to being home, and so am I. And then just lastly, I want to give a big shout out to Caden Knapp as well. He went down to Florida. Our other beat for women's basketball, he called both games, did a very good job. He's a freshman. That was his first road trip with the team. So pretty far road trip. So big ups to Caden. Caden did a very good job. So very proud of him.
Yeah, Lucas, definitely shout out to Caden. He did do a great job down there in the Ocean Center. The main thing that I like to see over the weekend, watching both of the women's basketball games, is the foul trouble, because that was a problem, one in the West Virginia game, some of the games before that as well. There was only 23 total personal fouls on the weekend, and Erica Porter, for one, only had 4, where she had been close to, if not fouling out, the other games that she's played this season. So not only has she been on the points leaderboard a lot more, she's got a lot of rebounds as well. She's done so without accruing a whole ton of fouls. The bigs for Bowling Green did a very good job, even without Taya Ellis, who I don't think played the entire weekend. I think they did a very good job. They were one of the high points of the team. I don't know, does your idea of them differ? Kendall Moxie, Erica Porter, the bigs?
Yeah, no, you're definitely spot on there. Erica Porter, like I mentioned, was by far the most positive individual you come out of the weekend. Moxie's gotten better and better coming off the bench as kind of 6th or 7th man and providing a couple of points and getting a couple of assists and also rebounds as well. Yeah, you mentioned Taya Ellis not playing. Donnie Donahue as well didn't play at all. Both of them are out injured right now. Don't know exactly what each injury is. I know Donahue's been wearing a boot before the West Virginia game, and she still played the West Virginia game. And then she didn't play against Ohio State, and then she didn't play this weekend. So I don't know how long she's going to be out, but obviously it's a lower leg injury of some sort. Freshman that started all the games, she's a big defensive player. And then obviously Taya Ellis, probably the best rebounder on the team, especially defensively. She's had a double-double a couple of times this season. And then her not playing this weekend as well. I believe she's going to be out 3 to 6 weeks with an injury as well. That's also a lower leg injury. I feel bad for her because, she played half the season last year, and then she really just can't catch a break really staying healthy. So those are 2. On the negative side is your 2 kind of defensive tone setters for the team. Didn't play this weekend, but you still managed to pull out 2 big wins. And players that have been filling in for them in those 2 starting spots have been Layla Harrison, the freshman from Cincinnati, and then also Lauren Gherkin, the freshman from Findlay. Gherkin was fantastic against Central. 20 points, I want to say. 7 points against Arkansas. Also had 6 rebounds against Arkansas. She had a monstrous weekend, and something that kind of flown under the radar. She was kind of the first person off the bench for the first couple games of the season, but now she's kind of being thrust into a starting role now that they're missing a couple of their big starters.
Backtracking a little bit, Lucas, there's a couple things that I want to touch on looking at, the past weekend's action again. Firstly, because we did talk when we were talking with Tyler about the men's basketball team, about, the non-conference schedule and, what you want to take away from it, figuring out how to mesh and whatever. And I think it's very optimism inspiring for the women's team to see this level of success because you already know that there's a lot more previously established continuity with this team than with the men's team that's, still trying to piece together a system of a lot of transfer guys. And I think the biggest thing to me about the weekend, you're always going to smile when you, as a MAC team, get the wave of the pirate flag, upsetting any power conference team. That's always going to feel good. But in particular, I feel just incredibly confident in the backcourt now. Specifically, you talked about managing foul troubles, and earlier in the year, I think it was when I was on our BG24 production with Chaz, and I called Paige Kohler having a breakout game, and she ended up playing 7 minutes total and fouling out. And from there to now, leading the team with 25, going 7 for 9 from the arc, including 6 for 6 in the last 3 quarters of that game against Arkansas. That just speaks huge volumes to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's so many games in basketball. I mean, you look at the season. I mean, they lose to Detroit Mercy, and on paper, obviously, that's not a good loss at all. And Detroit Mercy is a program on the rise with a former Falcon alum, Kid Actor, kind of leading the way over there. But then now you look and see you beat Arkansas, an SEC team that people didn't expect you to beat. So, I mean, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. But I think you and Ben definitely are right, too, in terms of a overall team positive with that foul trouble, is a lot of their bigs, and now with some of the injuries, they're not very deep in that 5 spot. So Erica Porter and Moxie and those bigs, even Lauren Gerken now, having them not get in the foul trouble is very crucial for the whole starting 5. Really, if you look at Amy Velasco and Paige Kohler, because before the tournament, they were the only 2 that could score consistently. So keeping them on the floor was crucial as well. So I think keeping them in foul trouble, definitely keeping them out of foul trouble, I should say, is very positive, and I think that's something that they should look forward to for the rest of the year. One thing that they still need to improve on is definitely those turnovers still. I mean, they're getting better closing out games at the end of each quarter, which is always good. But, I mean, you can't – sometimes they just turn over the ball in spots where you just can't afford to it. It happened a couple of times against Arkansas. It happened a lot against Ohio State, West Virginia. Granted, there are nationally ranked teams. But when you get into tournament play, when you get into these high-stake MAC games, you're going to want to take care of the ball better. And also, you yourself are going to want to create a couple of turnovers. And without Donahue and Ellis, your 2 defensive players that are very good at getting steals, you're going to need to find someone to fill in those roles as well.
Yeah, it seems like you can't overstate enough how important it is to manage foul trouble, but at the same time, when you're in a situation dealing with the kinds of injuries that they're seeing, it feels like certainly a welcome and well-needed development that'll hopefully continue for the team. And it seems like Chaz was going to ask you a question here.
Yeah, I got cut off a little bit, but
we got Chaz in the studio?
We sure do.
Gosh.
Wow. I'll take that one to heart, but it's okay. Lucas, so Holden kind of hinted at it a little bit, and you mentioned it. Against Arkansas, you have this BG team that really, they had a big load of trouble against both Ohio State and West Virginia, 2 very good Power 5 teams. What were the keys you think they took away from those Power 5 games? Obviously, you're playing at a higher level of talent. And, what gave them the ability to beat that Arkansas squad?
Well, a lot of it is what we said, too. But I think, honestly, for me, personally, was honestly getting the shot up quicker and not taking the shot clock all the way down to 5 seconds or below, and then just jacking up a shot when you're highly contested. If you go back and watch this West Virginia and Ohio State game, they took the shot clock down almost down to 5 and below every single time. And that's because they struggled to build out of the press that West Virginia and Ohio State were presenting. And so by the time they got down on the offensive end, it was already close to, 10 seconds, and they didn't really have time to set up a play, so they ended up just jacking up a shot. I think in Arkansas, they really found a way to move the ball faster, especially from one end to the other, but then also jacking up good shots and finding the open players. So I think just overall ball movement got a little bit quicker, especially on the offensive end, and just a couple of seconds make a huge difference in basketball in terms of creating up an open shot because, you guys both watched or listened to the Ohio State West Virginia games. They suffocated them. And those are two teams that are going to be the NCAA tournament regardless of what happens in the Big 10 or Big 12. So that's the biggest positive. They can stay focused from those games and apply it to Arkansas. And I think they're going to apply it to the rest of the season. Is their ability to just create faster offense, getting faster on the ball, and then just creating open looks.
Yeah, moving ahead a little bit because, as we said, pretty successful weekend, definitely seeing a lot of developments that, you would like to and hope to see from the team. So looking ahead, they've got Xavier. That's a home game next Saturday. And Xavier, a team that's 4-3 on the season, and they've already played 3 different MAC teams. They have a 5-point win over Miami of Ohio, but then a 20-point loss against Kent State and a 12-point loss against Eastern Michigan. Basing on what you may know of those MAC teams, what do you think you might see from the Falcons in that one?
Yeah, it's interesting. You just named off those MAC teams that they won and lost to. A couple of them are kind of in the mid-table of the MAC. A couple of them are towards the bottom, especially Eastern Michigan, and those as well. To be honest, man, I haven't really in-depthly dived into the team yet with the prep, but I guess from afar, I have looked at their schedule, looked at the players, and a couple of the results. It kind of does seem like they match up pretty evenly with Bowling Green, especially some of their guards. They're very good at shooting it as well. They're a pretty experienced team as well, same as Bowling Green. And, they play in the Big East, obviously, a tougher conference in the MAC. I think it's going to be a pretty evenly matchup. If I had to give a slight favor, I would probably favor Bowling Green. Not because I'm biased or anything, but because I think Bowling Green is now carrying the momentum now off of Daytona heading into the Stroh Center, while Xavier, you kind of look at the schedules like you named, it's kind of been up and down throughout this season, a couple wins against MAC opponents, but then also a couple losses against teams they probably felt like they should have beaten. So I think both teams are kind of in the same boat of a couple inconsistencies throughout the year, but I think Bowling Green's going to be running a little bit more momentum heading into Saturday.
It's the kind of thing where it feels really hard to, not ride the hot hand or, go against the team that's, really riding the momentum.
Yeah, it's hard. It's basketball. It's such a, all it takes is one game. There's so many games, and anything can happen. So, it's so early, and it's a non-conference game. Last year, these two teams played, and Bowling Green played a pretty good performance down in Cincinnati. So, they're going to be familiar with each other, so I'm looking forward to a big game Saturday.
For sure. Last thing I want to ask you, and this is, very parallel to how we closed our men's basketball discussion today. You look ahead at the schedule. They've got Xavier coming next, as we talked about. December 18th, they'll play Marquette at the Stroh Center. Then they'll travel to Duquesne. And after that, their next game is not till January 1st, their conference opener, which is going to be at Kent State. What do you expect to see, hope to see, however you care to answer it, from the team down this remainder of the non-conference stretch into conference play?
Yeah, I think now, honestly, you just want to have a winning record heading into MAC play. You have 2 big wins, now you're at the 500. I think if you take 2 of the next 3, get to at least 6 and 5 before MAC play. Even if you win all 3, I think Coach Shamil will be very happy. I think you look at Xavier, you look at Marquette, you look at Duquesne, like you mentioned. All those teams, I think Bowling Green matches up pretty well against. They're pretty even if you really look at it. 2 of those games are home as well. They've played a lot of road games. Only home games they've had Southern Miss and St. Bonaventure. So, I think the home court is something they're very looking forward to getting back to, but also something that's going to favor them as well. the Duquesne trip too, as well, is not a far drive. It's a Saturday noon tip, and I think honestly, you just you try to get all 3 wins, so you head into Kent State on New Year's Day, and you try to start MAC play well with a 1-0 start.
Yeah, well, certainly a lot to watch for the team looking ahead, and we'll have to see how they handle the remainder of this non-conference schedule, seemingly riding a pretty hot streak right now. Anything else that comes to mind? Do you feel compelled to talk about the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one glaring thing that people will point to in terms of a negative will be the injuries right now. Obviously, that's what kind of derailed them last year, and probably, cumulatively overachieved with how many injuries they faced last year. So, I mean, I think you really need Ellis and Donahue back healthy, especially starting MAC play, especially at least one of them. Those two are very good defensively, and that's really what you look for them to do. You don't really ask a whole lot of them offensively, and especially also defensive rebounding as well. I know even like Paige Kohler did very good defensive rebounding against Arkansas, which is not someone you're kind of asking for to do that, but I think that's something you really want to look forward to, is getting those players back healthy as well. And then also just rounding off Erica Porter's performances from the weekend and having a lot better performances in the paint, and just obviously making your shots when they're presented open, and just more consistently scoring as well.
Gotcha. Well, all right. I believe that's going to wrap up our women's basketball coverage for today. Lucas, thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Just last thing for me. Obviously, you 3 did very good over Thanksgiving break. So I want to appreciate Ben board hopping both for Kate, and I appreciate you Holden board hopping for Ben a couple of times. Chaz, I appreciate you board hopping for football. You guys did a lot of the dirty work this weekend, so really good work, guys.
Anytime, Lucas. Anytime.
Thanks, Lucas. Appreciate you.
Bye, Lucas.
All right. We'll see you, man. All right. With that, we are going to move on to a different sport that I'm sure at least half of this room has been kind of clamoring to vent about a little bit, maybe talk about however you want to angle it. The volleyball team, who, barring some tournament announcement, has concluded their 2024 play with frankly, a little bit of disappointment in the MAC tournament. Chaz, get us started.
Yeah, I mean, Holden, you really put the cherry on top of that. I mean, volleyball season is over. Let's be very honest. The NVIC would be a very fun tournament to be a part of, but I mean, I think all Falcon fans that follow volleyball were really excited for that NCAA tournament berth, and you end up getting the number 1 seed. You go 16-2 in conference play. You host the MAC tournament. You get a bye, and then you face off against a hot Western Michigan team that the second they won that game against Buffalo in the first round, they were all gas, no breaks. And Ben and I talked about this quite a lot. That game, Bowling Green, Western Michigan, on that second day, that Saturday, that was the MAC championship game, because following that, Western Michigan, they ended up sweeping Ball State. They really just shut down everything Ball State was trying to do, and BG Western Michigan, that went to 5 sets. That was a hotly contested matchup, both teams going back and forth, and the thing was, Western Michigan, they just started hot. They started every single match as hot as they possibly could. Bowling Green managed to come back, but when you're playing underdog in a 5th set that only goes to 15, that's not a way you want to play, and that's how the Falcons had their season ended.
Yeah, and I think you look at it, it really speaks to me. I think the tournament, at least from what I watched, said the most about Western Michigan than any other team. To me, it was a little bit reminiscent of how I felt, less thoroughly tracking BG last year, where, they were hot and then they were really cold, snuck into the tournament knowing, okay, we're here. We can still make a splash in this tournament. Western certainly didn't, I don't think, return this season with the regular season appearance of, a dominant reigning champion. But then you look at how they played in the tournament, and I would argue, certainly tells the story of, hey, they were built to win a championship, and there's a reason they've gone back to back.
I kind of disagree with that, only in the sense of they really returned everybody. That's another thing, because Ben and I did that call, that semifinal. you look at how many fifth-year seniors they have on that roster. They had Logan Case. They had Keona Salesman. They had Andolyn Simpkins, the reigning MAC Defensive Player of the Year. They had so many players. And then you look at how they started MAC play. And so they start MAC play. They go 1-1. Then they get swept by BG. Following that, they had a couple win and losses swapped. But then they go on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-game winning streak. And then they got swept by Ball State, and then they beat Ball State to end the regular season. This team went up against BG in the regular season, and Bowling Green, they kind of embarrassed them. They reverse swept them, and then they swept them both games in Bowling Green. Western Michigan had a lot to fight for. I mean, a lot of players going away. They had that 10-game winning streak in the MAC. This was a team that they started slow-ish, but you could still tell something was there. But the second they got going, they seemed unstoppable.
I actually think we do agree on it. I think more what I was getting at is if you look at face value on paper, you look at seeding, you look at the head-to-head record in the regular season, specifically against tournament opponents, which both ended up being rematches, the Bowling Green and Ball State. I think more looking at those was kind of my point.
Oh, yeah,
to
100%.
You don't necessarily look at it and say, like, yep, this is the dominant team to beat. But, again, I mean, you watched the tournament, and I think that was more than evident.
Oh, yeah. I mean, talent-wise, Andolyn Simpkins. Logan Case won the tournament player of the year, whatever you want to call it, the MAC tournament player. But Andolyn Simpkins in that Bowling Green game, she was the MVP. You have so many dominant weapons for Bowling Green. You had Lauren Hovey was practically shut down until the very end when they started to go to her. Bowling Green from the very beginning kind of was forced to go to the middles because their outsides weren't working. And the middles were working, but they weren't generating enough offense to win the match. And what happened with Western was they just did. And I think Bowling Green's defense did perform relatively well. The backcourt was doing a good job of protecting. And Lindsay LaPinta, I believe, did a good job. Avery Anders stood out to me. But then we ended up seeing a little bit later in the match, we saw Belle Lauby come in the backcourt. They just had to try anything that they could. And I think at the end of the day, that was a Western Michigan team that really wanted it more. And I don't think that's something that Bowling Green's going to take very lightly going into next season, especially with you're only going to lose 4 players. You're going to lose Alexis Mattel, Jordan Newblatt, Mia Tyler. So you do lose 2 big outside hitters and a big blocker, and then Lindsay LaPinta on defense. So 2 defense, 2 offense. And they have some players in the wings. Jessica Andrews is going to step up to be that primary blocker now, if she already isn't technically. You have Sydney Hernandez probably going to be the libero next year. The recruiting class is going to be very good. Edita Vaclavchik is unreal. She's got an explosive arm. The talent is there, and I think having this loss to WMU in 5 sets, then you watch them win the MAC tournament championship, get that NCAA bid, and later today you're going to be given basically a consolation prize. I don't think that's going to be taken lightly by Coach Tomich. I don't think that's going to be taken lightly by the entire coaching staff, and especially with now going to be a senior Lauren Hovey. There's a lot going into this matchup or this next season that I think they can build on from this matchup.
I just want to harp on this point of players and what we're going to see the next couple of years from the Mid-American Conference, because in my mind, and realistically, the last, I'd say 3-4 years of MAC volleyball competition, it has been Western Michigan, Bowling Green, and Ball State. Every championship match has featured those 3 teams and some combination. I think there's only we had Bowling Green, Ball State, Bowling Green, Western Michigan, now Western Michigan, Ball State. We've literally had every combination that's possible with those 3 teams. I think Western Michigan's window is closed unless they pull in some recruits that are just absolutely phenomenal. They're losing Anna Calcagno, great piece for them, did fantastic in the tournament. Logan Case, the best setter in the Mid-American Conference, pure setter in the Mid-American Conference, and one of the best setters in Mid-American Conference volleyball history. She'll be gone after this year. Keona Salesman is essentially a second-string outside hitter, but a huge piece for them. She's going to be gone. The libero, Andolyn Simpkins, who I think had had the best individual performance of the MAC regular season against Bowling Green in that semifinal match. I don't think it's crazy to say that. Maybe the stat sheet doesn't reflect it. She was the only reason that Bowling Green didn't win that game. If she didn't have the best game of her life, Bowling Green, I think, wins that game in 5 sets. She dug everything that Bowling Green hit. Even though she had 24 total, she was just absolutely phenomenal back there. She's going to be gone next year. Julia Marr, an outside hitter, huge in that tournament. She's going to be gone next year. And Madison Mers, who is also a senior, she was big in the tournament. She was great in that final set versus Bowling Green. She's going to be gone. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 players that you're losing from this year to next year. Looking through the rest of it, Mary Claire Brusick, she's a junior. She's going to be a senior next year. She had a lot of touches in the tournament. She did very well. She was kind of a mainstay player for them as a middle blocker through the entire year. The rest of the team, we saw a little bit of Regan Boyer, saw a little bit of Carly Piercefield, but as a libero, but only as a serve specialist, and Alana Erickson maybe as a serve specialist and back row player. There's not a single other player on the team that I really think is dangerous. Besides maybe Mary Claire Brusick, but she was a low tier middle blocker for them. She was the third option. Western Michigan's entire team is leaving.
You got to think about transfer portal too. Like you can see a ton of those players leave as well.
Yeah, a couple of them. Yeah, depending on how good they think the team's going to be. I think their window is closed. I think it came all together in this year. And even with that being said, I think Bowling Green is the best volleyball team in the MAC. It's just we all know, watching sports all the time, the best team doesn't always win. And this was a case of the best team didn't. In my opinion, the best team didn't win. Like Chaz mentioned, and he's right. Alexis Mattil, Jordan Newblatt, Lindsay LaPinta, and Mia Tyler are going to leave next year. And that's a horrible loss for the Falcons, but you're going to bring back Hovey, Andrews. You're going to bring back your back row. Amanda Otten, I think, is the best volleyball player out of any setter in the Mid-American Conference. We can argue about that at a different time. You're going to fill an outside hitter role with Ves Wawczyk, who looked very good this year in her first year playing for the Falcons. Sydney Hernandez and Avery Anders on that back row are going to be great for the next 4 years, assuming they stick around in Bowling Green. There's no inclination that they're not. I like the Falcons' chances next year. And then Ball State is the most scary team. They're only really losing Ayinde Smith, the middle blocker. She's a grad student. She's going to be gone. The other 2 players, Wolanski is a setter in a 2-setter system, so you're really not losing a whole lot through her. And Kendall Symet didn't play a whole lot this season. So Ball State's losing essentially no one, assuming their freshman of the year, Carson Tyler, sticks around. Other than that, next year, Bowling Green and Ball State, I think, are going to be the 2. I have no inclination that any other team's really going to take that big of a step forward. And I think maybe it's biased against Western Michigan because, frankly, I hate Western Michigan at this point. I can say that. Between hockey, football, baseball, volleyball now, it's just I'm glad to see Logan Case not on the floor against Bowling Green again. That's going to be pleasurable for me because she and Western Michigan just torches the Falcons. It was great to get 2 wins earlier in the season, but when it mattered, the Falcons couldn't get it done, and it was directly because of Logan Case that the Falcons lost, and Andalyn Simpkins that the Falcons lost that game in the semifinal.
Ben, I have to say, I completely mirror that as beat for volleyball and baseball. Western Michigan and Ball State are my mortal nemesis, whatever you want to call it. They are a plague to Bowling Green athletics in its current state. But I really like what you said about Bowling Green because it's right. I want to build on that a little bit because the thing about Bowling Green volleyball that I think a lot of people kind of forget about, this is a very deep team. You mentioned Ball State. The thing about Ball State is they've got a lot of freshmen stepping up. But this Ball State program is not one that I think they'll grow from their core players, but on a recruitment level, I think Bowling Green wipes them out of the water. I think.
Well, here's my argument. Western Michigan's going to go into they're going to go into their offseason after. I don't think they're going to win it all. So I say when they lose in the NCAA tournament, I don't think that's a hot take. They're going to go into the offseason not knowing who their starting 6 is going to be.
Yeah.
I can confidently say as a beat of Bowling Green volleyball and as a fan as well, I could probably give you a starting 6 out of this roster right now that would be pretty solid and MAC championship level competition.
I
I don't think that's that's going to be the difference, and Ball State's going to be able to do the same thing. They're going to bring back an entire
That's true.
starting lineup of players that are going to be able to compete and did in the MAC championship.
You could
That's just-
arguably get 2 starting sixes out of Bowling Green's roster is what I'm saying, though. I mean, we haven't seen a lot of those players play.
This year's roster, maybe. For next year's roster, I think you definitely have a starting 6 already without recruitment.
Speaking of recruitment, though, one of the names I want to bring up, I've talked to you about this, Olivia Brown from Temperance, Michigan, just down the road just a bit. She's a defensive specialist that can absolutely lay the boom as a hitter, which is kind of unreal. And I think getting maybe a back row attacker would be a really big addition to this squad. They bring her in. She's 5'10", so she's not the tallest, but I think that's one of those players that we expect to kind of break out next year. And especially with how Coach Tomich has been able to recruit, this team will be fine. I think right now we look at the players that are currently there and we say, oh, yeah, well, I mean, this is pretty good. I don't expect any hiccup in talent. They lost half of their roster last year, replaced it with freshmen, and they were a set short of the MAC tournament championship. So I think this team's just going to keep rolling on.
Looking at the team for, what really would project to be, a still successful year for next year, returning a lot of players as we've discussed, including important ones, Lauren Hovey, Jessica Andrews, that backcourt, especially. I want to talk a little bit about some of the recognitions from the actual tournament as well as the end of the regular season, because I don't believe we've talked about those since they came out on the Zig Zone. Daniela Tomich winning MAC Coach of the Year, I think very deservingly in everybody's eyes. Lauren Hovey, MAC Player of the Year, if I've got that correctly. Additionally, the MAC first team, including Lauren Hovey, Alexis Mattil, Amanda Otten, sophomore setter, of course, as well as the All-MAC second team had Jessica Andrews, Mia Tyler, and I believe that's it for the awards. And Jessica Andrews was also a tournament award. Which one was that, Chess?
So I haven't done that much digging because I think Ben and I were both checked out of the tournament at that point, but Jessica Andrews was honored on the floor during the MAC tournament.
I think she was all MAC team.
She
was all MAC all
tournament
team?
Yeah.
Yes. I don't think she got the defensive player because she only played in one match. And
I think it was
Simpkins.
Simpkins.
Simpkins also won it. So that was the only one that she would have been up for. That's a big recognition. She was the best player for the Falcons in the game that they played, for sure. And maybe she would have got a higher honor if they kept going and played in the championship. But I think it's still a big honor for her.
I think if they win that championship, she arguably deserved it. You're right, Ben. She was the best player on the floor. And something I really like to see, I don't know about you, her use as an offensive player specifically. Like, we know Alexis Mattil is going to get kills. We know that they're going to use their middles, but they usually don't look at Jessica Andrews as an offensive piece. She'll get a sneaky kill here or there, but they were going to her actively, and that's something I really enjoyed seeing, because you're going to lose Mattil. You're going to need a little bit more offensive efficiency out of your middle blockers, and to see that Jessica Andrews can do it on one of the biggest stages in her career, that's huge.
Yeah, she had 16 kills, only one error on 31 attempts. I believe she was 2 kills ahead of Alexis Mattil. So most of the kills on the day were from middle blockers for the Falcons. She also had 3 solo blocks and 7 blocking assists. If my math is right, that's 6.5 total blocks. Half a block for an assist. She had a dig as well, and the most points, 22.5, most by 5 over any player on Bowling Green. I think she was. She had the most points of any player in that game. So actually, you could make an argument that Jessica Andrews was the best player in the semifinal match between the Falcons and the Broncos. And again, the best team doesn't always win. I think it's very rare that the best team wins. Last year, Western Michigan was the best team and did win. This year, I think Bowling Green was the best team and Western still won. And I think that's due to their experience, a lot of which, and some, I don't think it was due to Bowling Green's inexperience. Some things didn't fall their way, and they did for Western, and kudos to Western and Colleen Munson getting another MAC championship, another title. But the season wasn't it wasn't a failure for the Falcons.
Not at all.
You got a regular season championship out of it. You got 6 people honored in the postseason awards. I believe that's the most of any team in the MAC, which is a huge honor. That right there should tell you how good the team was as one of the best teams in the MAC. You're bringing back a lot. You're losing a lot as well. They're going to sorely be missed, but yeah, you have games to go. You can still make a run at this NIVC, and we'll see who after the NCAA tournament's announced tonight, who they're going to play in the NIVC. I don't know, to be honest. It's a crapshoot, really, for who they're going to play. NCAA you might be able to predict, but NIVC, it depends on who's in, who's not, who's going to be willing to play in it, where regionally you're going to play. Don't know. We'll post something as soon as it's available to us, and then we'll have some Bowling Green volleyball coming up this week and finish out the season, hopefully pretty strong.
One more thing as we are closing in on our volleyball discussion that I want to touch on, partially just because I enjoy antagonizing Chaz, but also because I do think it is a relevant talking point, and this is certainly the place for it. The elephant in the room that I know you two have been thinking about since it was announced. Central Michigan's Allie Corbo wins the MAC Setter of the Year award, something you both, as we've all heard, fairly vehemently disagree with.
Dirty work, Holden. Dirty work.
Horrendous choice. Now, here's the thing. Watching Allie Corbo up close, it's like, yeah, she's the key to that Central Michigan team. That
she is the best player on that Central Michigan team.
They got bounced in the second round to Ball State. Almost pulled off the reverse sweep, unable to. I think Central had such a good year that they had to honor a player, and it ended up being Allie Corbo. And you look at Logan Case, you look at Amanda Otten. Ben, I think you said it perfectly. Logan Case is the best setter in the MAC, best pure setter.
By far. By the way,
by leagues,
not even close. So if you're judging it based on just pure setting ability, it should be Logan Case, far and away best setter in the Mid-American Conference.
But Amanda Otten, in terms of what she brings defensively with her height, offensively with her ability to attack, hit right in the donut, she is the best all-around setter. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people are, a lot of sickos like me and you, Ben, are kind of frustrated about, is that Central Michigan, Allie Corbo was great throughout the year, and she put up very good stats. But, I mean, even I don't have the stats in front of me right now, but I don't even think she had the most assists in the MAC.
I will pull it up in just a second. Actually, it's right here. Logan Case had 1,300. This is after the playoff as well, so it's going to be a little bit inflated for both Ball State and Western because Logan Case got a ton in the playoffs. She played 3 games. 1337 total assists, 11 average assists per set. Fantastic numbers, outstanding numbers. Amanda Otten was second in assists per set with 9.38 and 976. So she didn't reach the 1,000 mark, but she played 10 less sets than Logan Case, so that can account for some of it. She also had 2 average assists per set less, which is understandable, but she was second. Allie Corbo was fourth with 9.02 assists per set. She had the most sets played in the Mid-American Conference and 1,137 total assists, which is counting that game that they played against Ball State that went to 5 sets. So a lot of sets came with that as well. If you judged it based on the number of assists that she accrued, she shouldn't have got it. She wasn't number 1. If you judged it based on assists per set, she shouldn't have got it. She wasn't number 1. If you judged it based on her play outside of just setting ability, she was one of the worst out of any setters in the MAC and playing outside of setting. She didn't accrue a lot of digs. She didn't get any blocks, any kills. She didn't get a lot of total points. She was a pure setter only that wasn't the best in the MAC at pure setting. It's just frustrating decision from Mid-American Conference because Logan Case would have got her 4th setter of the year in 5 years and cemented herself as one of the best setters in the Mid-American Conference. And either that or Amanda Otten, who I think should have got it without bias. That's just how I view the awards given. I think she should have got it, but that would have been her first as only a sophomore, and she would have had a chance for 2 more. So you robbed a veteran of what would have been the cherry on top for her career in the Mid-American Conference, or you would have robbed Amanda Otten, essentially a newcomer, of her first year of availability and a great start to what is sure to be a great career from Otten. It's just I was flabbergasted when it came out. Fully expecting Logan Case, hoping it was Amanda Otten. there's nobody else even close. To be honest, it's I don't know.
You put it really well. Like I think that in both categories, both Otten and Case separately have their own claims to be setter of the year. Korba is kind of towards the middle in both aspects, a little bit more towards the bottom in doing things outside of just setting. But I want to say this, Ben. I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I said this to you during the semifinal game. I think you could say Otten, you could say Case. Mandy Lee from Buffalo also had a better year than Ali Korba, and I think she deserved it more.
I think she also had a better year than Ali Korba, but I think she was light years behind Logan Case and Amanda Otten. Otten played the entire game better than Mandy Lee, and Logan Case was by far a better setter than Mandy Lee. So
100%.
And there's only two real front row setters in the MAC, and it was Amanda Otten and Mandy Lee at like high quality. Mandy Lee was second to Amanda Otten. That's just how it was. Her assisting totals weren't. She tied Amanda Otten in total assists per set with 9.38, but she had way more. Not way more. She had a decent amount more assists and 12 more sets played. She was similar in that regard. Amanda Otten had more blocks, had more kills, had more points, less digs, but more aces as well. I did all the math. You can read the article actually that I wrote on it for the case for Logan Case, no pun intended, and Amanda Otten, bgfalconmedia.com, under the volleyball page, I believe. I have an opinion piece out on it. Not just based on opinion. There's actual facts and statistics in there. Did my own research, did it all. It all came conclusive that it shouldn't have been anybody but Amanda Otten or Logan Case. There's just absolutely no argument to be made for Ali Korba or anybody else besides Amanda Otten or Logan Case.
And
There's just not.
I think the biggest thing to take away from that is it's not to say that Ali Korba isn't a good player. Clearly a very good player.
No.
Clearly the heart of that Central Michigan team. But it
Yeah.
calls into question what the selection, what's going into the selection for these awards when you can't find a definitive statistical rationale to back it up.
And the fact that they don't lay out what the award means. Like, that's something I touch in the article as well. Is it for the best pure setter in the MAC, or is it for the best volleyball player of the setter position in the MAC? However you view it, it shouldn't have been Korba, but it's left up to a lot of opinion, and I feel like that's why Ali Korba, Chaz said it perfectly. I think they felt Central Michigan was unrepresented in the awards. They felt like they needed a star player, a face of the Chippewas, which they don't really have, and they wanted to make it by giving Ali Korba a Setter of the Year award. And again, Ali Korba, fantastic season. Her first full season playing as a junior. I think she only had 15 total sets played in her other 2 years. Did fantastically, but it shouldn't have been her. You robbed two very deserving players of an award that means a whole lot to their position and to the MAC as well. Setters are the key of the team, and you gave it to somebody that really just didn't deserve it.
Well, we are going to, hope to see some more volleyball action yet this year, but that's going to do it for our coverage for today. We're finally going to pull Sean Connolly out of the bullpen here to talk a little bit of football. But before we do that, we're going to step away for station identification again. Is just past the top of the hour. But before we do that, I'm going to throw out our first conversation topic to you gentlemen. And what had me thinking about it is just the last week, the holiday season, time off school, Thanksgiving itself. And so I'm going to leave it open-ended. You can hone in however you like. I just want a controversial opinion or hot take, however you care to categorize it, about Thanksgiving/Thanksgiving week. It could be about food. It could be about, festivities that happen around that time, parade, etc. It could be really anything you care to focus in on, but strong opinion of yours regarding that. And when we come back from our quick break here, we will discuss that and then finally get into football, probably the most to talk about today. So don't go anywhere. You're still listening to The Zig Zone on WBGU 88.1 FM. We'll be right back.
Did you hear that, kids? You too can join the International Humanist Conspiracy. All you have to do is listen to the World Music Show.
দেশের নয়, শুনুন পৃথিবীর গান।
That's right, music from everywhere but here, Sundays starting at 6 p.m. on WBGU 88.1.
Hey everyone, Falcon Media Sports Director Lucas Kleinmeyer here. You're listening to WBGU 88.1 FM, home of the Falcon Media Sports Network.
Welcome back to the Zig Zone. We are in the second hour now, and we're going to go ahead and circle back on the question I threw out to Chaz McNeil, Sean Connolly, and Ben Korek right before we stepped away. I want a Thanksgiving weekend-related hot take, controversial opinion, whatever, and I'll go ahead and go first and get the conversation started a little bit. And this is a conversation I had maybe yesterday or the day before, sometime after Thanksgiving itself, and mac and cheese is just so not a Thanksgiving food. And I know that's a who cares opinion, but I will die on that hill.
I will say
I agree with that.
When we did our social media post for volleyball, associate coach Alex Del Piombo said that, and said it perfectly, mac and cheese we eat all year round.
Mm-hmm.
Anything with macaroni we eat all year round. It's not a Thanksgiving specific food.
Well,
I thought that was
I
perfect.
think she's absolutely correct.
I can't argue with
Yeah,
that.
I agree.
Mashed potatoes. Do you not eat mashed potatoes all
I
year
eat
round?
it rarely. I think I eat it maybe
I think
once or
that's
twice a
maybe
year.
like a twice a year thing outside of Thanksgiving.
You guys are
I
insane.
I eat mashed potatoes more often than not in like cold weather season.
Oh, so what I'm hearing is you eat a good amount of mashed potatoes. It's the same with mac and cheese.
I feel differently. I think
I eat it maybe twice a year.
I think mac and cheese is
Way more
like reasonably a once every 2 weeks, once a week kind of thing. Mashed potatoes is not even close to that.
I
mashed
agree.
potatoes are
In
like
which case,
that's like a sit down
like
dinner
that's
food.
a-
Mac and cheese is like a quick
That's like
broke
saying
snack.
That's like saying you can have turkey. You can have sliced turkey on a sandwich, but
and
is it
don't get me
a
wrong,
rare thing? It
I
is.
had
And
a,
people hate turkey.
well, those people are wrong too. But don't get
I
me wrong,
agree.
I had a big, I had a big heap of mac and cheese on my Thanksgiving plate. I'm not saying it's not great. Like if I have mac and cheese at a Thanksgiving function,
there's nothing
I will
wrong
dig
with
in.
it.
For sure.
It's one of my favorite things, but it's not a Thanksgiving
But
food.
for people to say, "Hey, what's your favorite Thanksgiving food?" and them say mac and cheese, it's
It's
like you
wrong.
can make it the next day
it's
if you really
immoral and
wanted to.
wrong.
I'm
you know?
furious right now.
You can't make a turkey every
That's-
single day.
I will.
like
I will
that.
also say. I think if somebody said mashed potatoes are my favorite Thanksgiving food,
I would also-
I would think that's kind of weird.
I would
wouldn't
agree.
say that
I would
it's
agree
not
with
a
that.
Thanksgiving food, but you know, he
It's more of a Thanksgiving food than mac and cheese.
He plays
in
in
my
two
opinion.
different divisions. You know, he plays in both, and there's a little bit of crossover there. Mac and cheese plays in one division. He plays in both, but he plays so many more games a year in one.
It took
That's just-
one take, and now I'm really mad.
Okay, well, let's hear yours.
what's
and
yours? Yeah.
Let's see what.
Okay, so we did this question for Halloween, and I targeted my girlfriend because I have to do it again. She comes from a turkey trot family. The turkey trot is stupid. It is the dumbest thing ever invented. It makes no sense.
If you don't like
Why
cardio,
doesn't it
just
make
say
sense?
so.
Why doesn't it make sense?
Because like, here's the thing.
I've never participated in one, by the way.
Yeah.
Never.
I haven't either.
Oh, don't get me started. You're waking up at like butt crack in the morning, and you're going to run, and then go and eat food, and then you feel like garbage for the rest of the day because you just ran 4 miles.
Is it?
I'll say
is
this.
the point of it a calorie burning thing?
No, it's for people that are already like self-righteous to be more self-righteous on Thanksgiving.
Well,
be like,
that's-
oh, I
that's-
deserve this turkey.
That's what I was gonna like. If you're gonna do that, go do it. I don't care, but don't make it your personality on Thanksgiving that you're running a turkey trot.
That's
and
fair.
that's why
And
I always
that's
am like,
fair.
all right, I don't care.
That was the invention of the turkey trot, was for people who have the biggest
Nothing else
egos
better
to be
to
like,
do.
oh, did you know I
Yeah.
also run?
I
yeah,
don't
I
think-
ran 5 miles this morning, and I'm about to eat it all like back.
Yeah.
See, I've got two
Congrats,
things
no
on
one
this,
cares.
and I will say, like, my household is very much a turkey trot household.
We can
but, okay, if you don't like cardio, say so. But anyways, number one, I don't think how it like came to be is indicative of how everybody treats it now. So even if it was a self-righteous thing originally, like that doesn't mean that represents the majority of people who do it. And number two, I think that it's just really a great hack to have a fat Thanksgiving dinner, honestly. Burning the calories in the morning, very conducive to just putting away a lot of food. And who doesn't want to do that? Sometimes you go to Thanksgiving and the spread is phenomenal. It's like, wow, there's like 9 different things I want to eat like a decent portion of. How am I going to do that?
Yeah.
Tell you what, running 3 miles in the morning gets it done. Me
At what-
personally, I was slow as heck this year.
At what
But-
time of morning do turkey trots occur?
Butt crack. Like,
One I ran was 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
Stupid.
So what time did you get out of there? Because I'm worried about missing the Lions game at 1.
Yeah, you
I gotta-
probably
I
will.
gotta-
You probably
I
will.
gotta get home, shower. Somebody gotta cook. Everybody's watching the Lions game.
Mhm.
And Ben, it's also 12:30, so
Yeah.
it's not even 1.
That's true. It's even earlier.
And I'll tell you
that
what.
would be my concern.
I'll tell you what. If you've got the prep, if you've prepped the food that you're bringing in advance, not an issue. We got back home by maybe 10:30 at the latest. Already
Okay.
had some things going through the turkey and the
Okay.
smoker, and
All right.
there were no problems. We were seated
Respect.
watching the Lions right on time, and
Respect.
yeah, it was no hitches. I get it. I get it,
Yeah.
Chaz. You don't like cardio. I understand.
No.
but-
It's I've never met
I
a
need
turkey
t-shirt
trot.
that says Chaz doesn't like cardio.
I've never met a turkey trot family that didn't walk in and be like, "Oh, I deserve this turkey more." Because guess what I did today? It's like nobody cares. And
Again,
really,
if it's not your personality, like
yeah, that's
as
fair.
long as it's not your personality, I don't care.
But runners
Do
make
it.
running
I
their
don't care.
personality.
I don't get the running without being competitive though. If you're just going out there for fun, why? Run to be first. And if you're
Not
What a
first
winner
or last.
mentality, Ben.
If you're not first, you're last.
Exactly.
Ben, do you hit the weights ever?
Huh?
Do you hit
once in
weights?
a while? Once in a while.
Are you competing in like powerlifting
You're competing with
or
yourself.
bodybuilding?
You're competing with yourself.
Well, that's how
I guess.
running
Then that's
does
what
too.
running is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same. Well, that's what I'm saying. If you're
Yeah.
like improving or doing it for like physical
But
fitness, maintenance,
yeah.
whatever, I don't think your position.
But I wouldn't like go lift and then later be like, well, I can justify this
Yeah,
by
that's
eating
true.
terribly,
And it's a horrible tradition.
Yeah, I don't know. It would be really weird if we're gonna have like the turkey deadlift and you just go deadlift for
turkey does.
for 3.5 miles.
Okay,
I'm
well, that's
actually
kinda
intrigued.
sick.
That's hard.
Yeah,
That's
that is
kind of
kinda
sick.
Sean, Ben, what you got?
Mine is I don't know how you guys all fall on this, but Christmas deserves to be celebrated the day after Thanksgiving. I think Thanksgiving deserves
All right.
its.
You need a
it's-
high five for this.
It needs its flowers. It needs everything because I love Thanksgiving. It is one of my favorite holidays of the year. I can like Christmas isn't a November holiday, so once Thanksgiving ends, okay, do it. That's for a full month, maybe a little less than a month, depending on when it is. I think that Thanksgiving deserves its time, and then when it transitions into Christmas, fine. But I hate people, and again, who make their personality. I'm celebrating Christmas November 1st. I don't care. I really
Yeah.
don't.
I'm not even like. I don't even think that it's right to like put up Christmas decorations the day after. Like if you want to, it's fine. I think it has to be December 1st.
I
think you
I
at
get
least have
my-
to be December 2nd or 3rd before you put everything up.
We usually get our tree the day after Thanksgiving, and that's perfectly
fair.
fine.
I just wouldn't do that.
But we
I
don't decorate it until maybe a few weeks later. We just have it because that's when everyone's home.
Yeah, fair enough.
And like I said, I just hate the people that the second November 1st hits, Christmas trees, Christmas music, cookies, all this. I'm like, that time will come, but it
Yeah.
won't be. I want to celebrate Thanksgiving for what it's worth. And
It's
that's-
you need to leave it special. You
I
know?
agree. I
It's gotta
agree.
be a
You need
special
to exactly,
time.
and that's why
Yeah.
I think December is such a Christmas month. It's like all Christmas,
Christmas
all
is
the
in
vibes.
December.
Yeah.
It's just
like-
it frustrates
yeah.
me when like I said, people make it their personality, and it's also like you just see people posting online. It's like I don't care.
Can I quote you on that, Sean? December is such a Christmas month.
It is.
Yeah, like
it's
those
such a
people
Christmas
that
month.
are like
Sure
putting
is.
up lights and stuff
Yeah.
like the day after things.
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
okay,
yeah. And
let,
it's like-
let fall be fall.
You
let
have this
Thanksgiving be.
like I drove home on Tuesday, and it was dark. And I just see one of the houses I passed by in my neighborhood was just decorated with Rudolph, Santa, all in the front yard. And I'm just like, you did this before Thanksgiving.
Those
You
are-
literally took
yeah.
time out of your day to do this before Thanksgiving.
Those are the same people that take it down the day after Christmas.
Oh,
the
yeah.
day
Mhm.
after Christmas. Like everything's stripped down.
Or they don't take it down until like February.
Yeah.
And it's like, really? Really? I just,
Yeah.
Christmas
There's-
is special because,
There's a window in there that you have
Yeah,
to hit.
there's a window.
Yeah.
I agree.
Ben, what about you? What
That was
you
a
got?
really good one. Mine's gonna be a little bit less good. I think. I think Thanksgiving leftovers are bad. I'm not a leftover guy.
Wow.
I don't think reheating turkey is good. I think
so you gotta
stuffing.
fry up the turkey.
That's a good call.
I still
Fry
don't.
up the turkey.
I
change-
have
it will,
done that.
You'll like it better.
I have done that. I still don't. Gravy's still good. Leftover. Everything else is kind of eh.
I heavy
Mashed
agree with
potatoes,
that, man.
no.
I mean, that's fair.
Green
I
beans,
do.
no. I don't know who actually eats cranberry sauce. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
leftover.
no. Kyle Edmond, one of our
Yeah,
SIDs,
he was so right.
he was so right. Cranberry. I've never been, I don't think it's ever been at one of my Thanksgivings.
I love
we just,
cranberry sauce.
Nobody
I remember-
nobody likes it in our family. So
I remember it
bye
like
bye.
once, but it's just like not noteworthy enough.
Yeah.
Cranberry sauce is so
If you
good.
can't make it homemade, why?
Yeah, if you do get like the can, that
you
just
got
it looks
this
disgusting.
You've got this gelatinous mass.
I've never
in the
heard
shape
it.
of a can.
It's awesome.
No.
I've never
you have like the
phenomenal.
lines of the can
like
on
that.
the.
I've never heard anybody say like, "Yeah, we're making homemade cranberry sauce."
Dude,
Like, no,
you've never
buy
had
it from the
cranberry relish?
can. No,
That's what they call it in families that are
that
great at
sounds
cooking.
disgusting.
It's
Relish is already.
it's
disgusting.
orange.
Relish is already
It's
like
o-
a bottom condiment for
It's
hot dog.
that is true. Well, you're not putting
That's
it on a hot
probably
dog.
last. What could
But-
be? I'd
Mayo?
rather put Hershey syrup on a hot dog than
That's-
relish.
I'd rather
That's
do that too.
disgusting.
Honestly,
I'd rather do that
that-
too.
that would probably be good.
That's criminal.
But you guys don't have homemade cranberry sauce? This is
No.
like insane.
Sure.
to me.
No,
like I
that's
said,
'cause you're
cranberry sauce
British,
isn't even on
Chaz.
the like
That's-
menu
that's 'cause
at
you're
my
British.
Thanksgiving.
Listen, we all can't be
Because you
from
got some weird
Czechoslovakia.
Okay, that's wrong.
Okay.
But
I think we're losing the plot a little bit. So I think it's time.
I do have a mini one technically. I think Thanksgiving week is also a top 3 sports week of all time.
Oh, I think it's
Agreed.
That's
of,
not
of
a
the
hot
year.
take.
Of the year.
I
of the
think
year.
it's top 2.
That's
maybe
potentially top
maybe
2.
best 4 days of sports for the year.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not.
You
top
got
two.
college basketball
It's top
tournaments,
one.
Thanksgiving football, and then just college
Thanksgiving
football rivalry.
week.
Yeah.
Today's
And then a
NFL
regular
games,
NFL
and
NFL games on
NFL
Sunday
games
too,
on
yeah.
Sunday are
Mhm.
always good.
Especially
Always
when the
good.
Lions win on Thursday and you don't have to
Oh
worry
my
about it.
God.
Oh yeah,
Beautiful.
that's what.
Let's go,
That's
baby.
when I walked in. I was like, we don't have to worry about watching a game during the Zig Zone.
So
we already
nice.
have that win in our back pocket.
Watching Eberflus just
Dweeber
cook his team.
Oh,
All right.
gosh.
Well, anyways, we'll have one more time permitting at the end here, but we're going to go ahead and move into talking about football. It's so close. Just can't get it done, Sean.
Not really so close.
Oh, I, mean,
I hate to say that.
Like long term, so close.
Yeah.
Bigger
Oh,
picture,
yeah, yeah,
like
yeah.
game wise,
Yeah.
one game away.
It came
from
down to the
Detroit.
last game. It did.
Yeah, it was an emotional loss for them, and you could feel that. Like I said, game aside, in the press conference, Scott Loeffler teared up and just he loves those guys and he loves those kids and he loves coaching. And so to come up from the ultimate goal so short, or just like a game short, and maybe a few things go your way, it'll be a different result. So that's why I think it was a little emotional, because it's like it was right there. You had it in your back pocket essentially. You just had to convert some things on offense, and that's what we'll get into in a little bit. But and all the players and coaches were emotional, because that might be a reason why some of these players came back, was to win a MAC championship for Bowling Green.
Well, and something that lingers to me, and I don't want to, put the kiss of death on it on the microphone by any means, but in our volleyball conversation, the way we were talking about windows and how open or closed they are, you look at this year's team, and there's going to be a lot of question marks, I think, going into next year, like just from a roster standpoint of, is this the kind of team that next year after these losses can still contend to the level they did? I mean, the obvious Harold Fandon Jr., I mean, if he's not playing on Sundays next year, I will be dumbfounded. Connor Bazelak, second year in the system, he's going to be not here. Brock Horn, one of the tied for the most starts BG history. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
He won't be here.
I think
to name a few.
I think when we were talking about volleyball and the Western Michigan argument, a little bit less so. I think it's a very comparable. Like, this might have been. We talk about NFL window all the time. This might have been a window kind of thing. Fannon's going to be gone. Bazelak's going to be gone. I don't know what's going to happen with Terrion. There's a possibility that he's going to be gone. If you lose those have been the big three. We literally, BG News put out front page of the BG News was the big three,
yeah.
with Bazelak, Fannon, and Terrion. There's a chance they're all going to be gone. This was could have been magical, but
Oladokin as well, right? Or is he
Yeah,
a senior?
there's 32 seniors on this team. Obviously, not all playing and
didn't know
starting,
that.
but
That's awful.
they're like, this team's going to take a hit, and that's, I think, one of the, like you said, a window. Is it going to close? And I even texted this to Reese, Tyler, and Lucas after the game. Is like, what's Loeffler's plan going to be? And is he going to be one of those guys like Chuck Martin or Jason Candle at Toledo? Like, they've stuck around there for a long time, MAC school, and that's it's rare to see that, because MAC schools seem like it's pit stop for a higher job. But you see a couple guys like that, and they've built phenomenal programs. Miami and Toledo. Look at Miami; they're going to back-to-back MAC championships, chance to win back-to-back MAC championships. Toledo's always in the mix. Is that what Scott Loeffler wants? And that's, I think, what next year is going to be a big question mark. How do you respond after losing a lot of those seniors and a few of the juniors that may declare. Transfer portal, that goes for the whole team. But yeah, so I'm eager to see how Scott Loeffler responds. But again, this was one of those losses that was just, it was emotional. And you saw it, like I said, from Scott Loeffler. And I think that shows character from him. It's like he wanted that so bad. And like I said, to come up short was just...
Because he's going to have to essentially rebuild.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
was this his 6th year or 5th year?
5th year, I believe.
5th year. So he's going to have to rebuild in his 6th year, and then you're going to have to rejudge everything that he does from here on out. Because, and we're talking about this with still a bowl game, but I don't think there's a large contingent of those players. 32 seniors is a lot. I don't know how many are going to play, especially if they have aspirations of doing something after.
Yeah. What other than maybe Harold Fannin, who's surefire going to be a top 2 round pick, in my opinion. Obviously, it depends on the combine.
Nearly guaranteed top 3.
Top 3 for sure.
Best tight end, hands down,
in the
college
country,
football.
100%.
And best one in the day.
So he has all the right in the world to not play. Obviously, we want him to play, but Jordan Oladoka and Connor Bazelak both said it in their post-game conferences, was like, we signed up for 13, 14 games this year. We're going to play 13, 14 games, depending on, obviously, MAC championship depends.
It's great to hear.
But yeah, I think Oladokan's going to play. Bazelak's going to play. I'm assuming most of the other seniors are going to play. You don't really see opt-outs at a lower level school, a group of 5 school like Bowling Green, just because, they don't really get scouted by NFL as much as obviously the higher teams do. And I think that's obviously a main reason why some of the bigger players declare, so they don't want to get hurt on their last game, so they still have their NFL window open. So I think most of the seniors are going to play. Obviously, who knows if that's just their word or what's going to happen, but I'm confident they're all going to play, maybe other than Harold Fannin. And he has all the right in the world to not play.
Something I want to look at just real quick. Actually, if you count the shortened 2020 season, this is Scott Loeffler's 6th year. So next year will be his 7th at the helm from 2019 on.
How short was the shortened year?
They played 5 games.
I always say that, especially like that. The 2020 season in college football, if you were good, you count it. If you weren't, you don't count it. So, and we went 0-5 that year. So
I don't think we count that on his.
No, I don't.
He was a part of the team,
and that year was such like a cluster. You really can't.
Yeah.
It especially for a MAC school, like
but anyway, going into whatever year.
Anyway, just looking back, I think it'll be interesting to see. Certainly, like this feels like the strongest group that BG has lost under Scott Loeffler, and again, outside of that asterisk year, you've seen a steady improvement. Year after year, we're sitting at 7 wins now, with a chance to get to 8, which would be another win over last year, 3rd straight bowl appearance, which is an incredibly positive trajectory. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I know, I've heard it from, students who aren't, maybe don't follow the team as seriously as we tend to in Falcon Media Sports Network, and seen it online too. I think the shade or criticism for Scott Loeffler has been incredibly too heavy, specifically in response to the Miami game. To me, I don't think he called a bad game at all, really.
No, I personally just think that Miami they're a really good football team. Their defense is absolutely stellar. And I think that's why Bowling Green's offense just didn't find a rhythm. It felt like Connor Bazelak it was reverting to his old self a year ago, where he kind of was playing a little scared, not too comfortable. Him and Fannin were just not on the same page, and that's really rare to see. So I just think Miami played really well, and Bowling Green just didn't. I don't think Bowling Green even played necessarily bad. They just didn't get a rhythm going.
Yeah, I the only thing I can criticize coaching end would probably be adjustment coming out of halftime.
Yeah,
I didn't really see a whole lot.
You did get the ball to start the second half too, so
and you didn't really see a whole lot come from anything that they did in the second half, which again is probably a testament to Miami over just Bowling Green. I'm sure they did make adjustments. They have a lot this year. They've been very good coming out of half compared to last year, and I don't think that's a problem. I don't think Bazelak had a great game.
No, like I said,
I think that was one of the main reasons. You kind of had to go to the air a lot at the end, and he wasn't really the most outstanding. What was it, his first turnover since the Old Dominion game?
Yeah, so he threw a pick, I believe, in the third quarter that was.
Yeah, something like that.
First pick against a MAC school from last year. I believe November 10th was the date against Kent State. So that's over a year since he's thrown an interception to a MAC school. And yeah, like I just noticed that he just didn't really feel comfortable in the pocket. He wasn't necessarily getting pressured like every single time. The O-line played like Bowling Green didn't play necessarily quote unquote bad. I just think Miami played really, really well, and that might be an experience thing. But Bowling Green were the lights too big. Miami's been in this position a million times already under Chuck Martin. Were the lights too big for Bowling Green? That's also another question, and that's why I think, did Connor Bazelak, like I said, were the lights too big for him? You didn't really have a good game for Terrion Stewart, your superstar, Harold Fannin. Again, him and Bazelak weren't on the same page really all day. You really didn't have any positives on the offense.
I always wonder about Bazelak because when you were winning, it was because he was very strong. He was solid in the pocket. He did some pretty decent things outside the pocket as well. But in the two games, like last drives against Penn State and A&M when you needed him, and granted, great teams, didn't really come up with what you wanted from him specifically, not just the team, just from him. I think Penn State game he threw, or A&M was it, that he threw that pick that sailed over Fannin's head by like 10 yards into the back of the end zone, and it was picked off on like one of the last drives of the game. You would have tied the game with a touchdown. Or there's been some crunch time plays when you're down that Bazelak just hasn't been able to convert on, and maybe that's just happenstance, and it happened again. But you mentioned the lights too bright. I wonder if Bazelak just didn't respond well to being down in a game as he hadn't really been for a couple of weeks before, and against a really good defense that he'd have to step up on. And again, who knows? All conjecture, but he didn't look. It didn't look like his strongest game. And establishing the pattern when he doesn't have his strongest game, it's because they've been down and they have to battle back. And I just think that's a recurring theme in his game from last year and early this year and through the rest of the MAC schedule and to the last game of the season, unfortunately. Second to last game of the season. Last regular season game of the season.
Yeah, speaking of second to last game of the season, looking ahead, bowl game kind of feels up in the air. Now looking at the loss, there were some projections out showing maybe the Arizona Bowl, but it's I've been certainly trying to do my research and figure, where has the team placing where BG is, around that third spot in the MAC, where have they been placed? And I have no idea.
Yeah, CBS put out one, I believe, today or last night after all the games finished. Bowling Green is projected the Arizona Bowl against Colorado State. So that's a new location. I mean, personally, obviously, if we went to Detroit, we'd be able to have coverage for that, but I know the players and the players, students, even parents, all that, they want to go somewhere new. You want that new area, especially Arizona would be nice. But yeah, and I think this is, if you also look at it, one of their best, clearly Scott Leffler's best team. When it seemed like last year they kind of just got into bowl eligibility, so they kind of got, one of those, I wouldn't say bottom tier bowl game. So,
Sean, I will say this. Imagine how electric it would be. We go back to Detroit for a third year, but we face the 7-5 Michigan Wolverines,
who just beat Ohio State.
Exactly.
Sorry, Ohio State fans, but yeah, I mean, trust me, I do want to go to Detroit, but from a player standpoint, I know they probably want to go somewhere different. However, Bowling Green fans travel well. There's positives and there's pros and there's cons from going to Detroit for a third straight year. But yeah, that would be electric.
That feels very, and I don't know that there's necessarily the precedent to agree with me, but I have a hard time seeing them going to the same one 3 times.
That's why
I don't think they would allow.
I was surprised
we
went there last year.
Yeah.
I don't think that they would allow that to happen 3 years in a row.
I don't think.
I think they would
that.
force it away just because. I mean, for a player standpoint, you're getting the same gear, the same location. You know how things are going to go down. The point of a bowl game is so that it's different, especially from a player standpoint. You get to go to
a new
Arizona and play against a team that you would never play normally. When was the last time BG faced Colorado State? I don't know if ever.
Yeah.
So that's cool. That's a cool thing.
Yeah.
Especially for a group school that is very regional. It's not like the Big Ten or the SEC that travel a pretty large amount now. Arizona is outside the realm of possibility for how they're going to travel. So was A&M the farthest that they've had in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I think so.
I think the thing
actually California, UCLA.
Oh,
2
okay.
years ago, 3 years ago, whenever that was.
I think the biggest thing in my head is I feel, and maybe this is incorrect too, I would like to see them against a team that has, that kind of pull where it's going to get people tuned in, people talking about it, people watching, the same way that the Penn State and Texas A&M games went. And I know that necessarily doesn't maybe bode well, if you're matching up against a Power 4 team, they might, take care of business. And I would certainly like to get a bowl win this year instead of a loss. But
I agree, because I said this, I believe, after the game ended, when they first got bowl eligibility 2 years ago, I think they just snuck in, and they actually finished the year 6-7. But it broke that streak of just not being able to get to a bowl game. Next year, we made a bowl game, finished with a winning record, I believe 7-6. Still lost that bowl game. This year, like you still have, you could have the best finish since 2015 if you do win your bowl game, and a first bowl win since 2014. So there's still a lot to play for this Bowling Green team.
Yeah, and I think it will be very indicative of the kind of the mentality of the team, I guess, going in. Just the result that we see, like, I don't know, it'll give a pretty clear picture of how they handled the loss and bouncing back, coming that close but coming up short to the MAC championship, and it'll be interesting to see how Scott can get the guys ready. One other thing, just because we're nearly looking, as crazy it is, we're nearly looking at the season in the rearview mirror already.
It's crazy.
Looking ahead to next year, obviously it's going to be a big question mark, just personnel-wise in terms of players, who's filling a lot of the holes that are going to be, left by the graduating seniors and, inevitably maybe some transfers too. But I think there could be some really fun matchups in the non-conference schedule. As of now, they are slated to travel to Cincinnati for their second game.
That'll be a fun matchup.
And Louisville for their fourth game. And I think both of those seem like, from what I've seen from either of those teams, at least recently and this year, could be really fun matchups. And even for a team that's slated to lose a lot of talent, to go contend with Penn State and Texas A&M, I mean, Cincinnati, Louisville's a little step down. I think you could see some pirate flags next year.
I think that's an even step down in competition to where they're going to step down in talent.
Yeah,
I think it's very comparable.
Yeah,
like there's, based on what we saw in the Penn State and Texas A&M games, you probably have, even with the talent step down, you probably have an even chance to beat, a similar chance to beat Cincinnati and Louisville. I would say, depending how they're take a step forward. I'm not going to profess to be an expert on Cincinnati and Louisville football,
right?
But they're a step down from A&M and Penn State. The Falcons are going to be a step down from this year to next year. Should be fun. These games are always fun to watch. They're pretty regional too. I'm assuming we're going to have coverage.
Yeah,
almost guaranteed to have coverage for both. Somebody will drive down. So, I'm pretty excited for those two games. I like those a lot better than the A&M and Penn State this year.
And I'll tell you what, even one more that's even kind of fun in between there, a home game hosting Liberty in the second
rematch from last year.
Yeah, that'll be.
That'll be. A
I
fun
thought
one
we
too,
should have won that game last year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Liberty.
like a few things, because I think we threw like
Baszak
3 or 4
threw 3
picks. Yeah, it was
and
it was
Sam threw 1 or 2,
insane.
yeah.
And if those go our way and we end up scoring on at least one of those drives, I think we win that game. So, and Liberty actually ended up going to. They were the bid from the group of 5 to go to one of the bigger bowl games. So.
And then you look at them this year too. I mean, they certainly didn't finish the season the way they'd like to, but they started as hot as almost any group of 5 team on.
You were
this
thinking
season.
Again, like, are they going to get the bid for the college football playoff? So
it was certainly in contention.
I think that'll be a really fun matchup as well.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to, even with the question marks and the concerns. I think Scott Loeffler should have silenced any doubt about the direction of the program, and I think that kind of the talk is a little bit of hot air now, even though we do need to see how they handle, the losses of players.
Yeah. Can we play a prediction game now that we're wrapping up football? Can we predict who we think is going to win the MAC championship?
Yeah, I mean, something I also want to point out about the MAC championship, if we were still in divisions, Ohio and Miami wouldn't match up in the MAC championship.
Would Bowling Green have guaranteed to get in?
I looked at it before the game. I didn't look at it after. I don't
remember which teams are in which.
I don't think we would have, because I think Miami was in our division.
Well,
I could be wrong, but
so the problem is that I was looking at this a couple days ago.
I think
actually.
Miami was, because Miami and Toledo finished ahead of us last year.
Miami, yeah, they were, and the thing is that you can take the standings and be like, okay, so maybe divisionally we would have been, wherever. But the matchups also, the schedule doesn't play out the way it does this year if you have those divisions, because you are guaranteed to match up against those. So it's you can play a hypothetical what if game based on this year.
But yeah, so a divisionless MAC championship brings one of the top rivalries in the MAC in Ohio and Miami. So I think it'll be a really fun matchup. I believe the line was like 1.5. I think favored Miami. So it's going to be a close matchup. I believe Miami won back in September,
30
October.
to 20 in October.
What do we think if we had to make?
I think Miami wins that game.
You think?
I think it's hard to beat a team twice, but I think Miami is they're really good.
I think
team.
Miami's way too hot.
Yeah,
to lose
they're really
to
good.
Ohio.
They literally started their MAC conference play against Toledo with a loss. Ever since then, they've lost. So I think they're too hot to lose.
I've been high on Ohio all year, so I guess just to break, so it's not a clean sweep, I'll take Ohio. Like you said, it's a very good point. It is tough to beat a team twice. Nearly impossible, and especially a tight game in the first one. I think Ohio's been pretty good this year. Watching one of their games, I think they're very comparable to BG. And BG obviously didn't get the upper hand, but I think Ohio's a little bit of a better team. So definitely look to see.
I think, like I said, fun matchup.
Definitely.
I believe it's at noon at Ford Field, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely it'd be fun to tune in and see those.
And it's a rivalry
Especially,
game, too, so
again,
it adds to
something that I think illustrates the beauty of divisionless conferences perfectly is getting to see a rivalry matchup in a conference championship is so cool to me. I think that's awesome.
And just the top two. And just the top two teams, because when you have divisions, you might get a team that has lost 2 conference, even 3 conference games, and it's like, are they really the best? Are they really the best team in the Big Ten or whatever conference? Sorry, no, they might not be. So having a divisionless conference is nice.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we will certainly keep a watchful eye to the bowl selection, which I think is a week from today, actually. So I think for the next Zig Zone show, we should know where our team's going to be. But we're going to move on and talk about the hockey team who hosted Michigan Tech this week. And Ben, take us away. It was an interesting weekend.
Yeah, it was. The first game, it was a pretty weird game to try and analyze because they lost 3-0 to Michigan Tech. Really didn't have a lot of offense. That's an easy thing to analyze. Got a lot of chances, didn't get a lot to fall, and that happens in the game of hockey. But also on the other side of the ice, Michigan Tech had a little bit more chances than the Falcons, but the goals that they've scored, all 3 of them, were kind of happenstance things. 2 of them were on rebound chances that the puck was just kind of dribbling around right in front, and a stray stick caught it. And one of them rolled right between the legs of Colmore, which looked like I think I said it on the broadcast, looked like it was pushed with a toothpick, like it had no heat on it at all, just kind of escaped in. The other one, the third one, I remember Victor Hertig actually scored it for Michigan Tech. It was kind of up in the air. He smacked it down and beat Colmore, who was left out to dry. And both of those goals, at least, I don't think can be really attributed to Colmore. I think he played a fantastic game. It really doesn't show how well he played to have 3 goals allowed on the board, which is just above his average goals allowed for the game, so it just raised it a touch. He was great. And then in the next game, after the 3-0 loss, Christian Stover got his first game played and the first game start of the season, and he did absolutely amazing. 43 saves and only 2 goals allowed, but on the second goal allowed in the third period, he suffered an apparent injury. He dropped, trying to make a play with his glove, and his leg split. I'm assuming, based on what I saw, it's going to be a groin. He had to be helped up so he could skate off the ice. He did skate off under his own power, but he didn't go to the bench. He went right to the locker room, and he didn't go back in the game. Colmore came in and had a lot of saves and a shutout performance after that, including in the shootout that the Falcons won off of Brody Waters and Brett Foe. But Christian Stover in his first game back, I was feeling real good that he was back in the lineup card because he's Colmore's better, I think. But you don't want the entire season to be rested on the shoulders of Colmore. You want to have a backup in case something that happens to Stover does happen. It happened to Stover. Colmore happened to be the backup, but now depending on how long the injury is going to be, you're back without one again. And Sally Vola is the next man up, which is a step down from Christian Stover. So not a great thing to come out of the weekend there, but they did take 2 points. They forced an overtime. Well, they took 2 goals in the second period. Again, in the second game against Michigan Tech, allowed 2 in the third period on defensive breakdowns, not really attributed to Stover, but he could have stopped the puck, so it can be. He had 43 saves, 2 goals allowed when Colmore came in after that second goal, and Colmore, I forget how many saves he had, but he was shut out through the overtime, and then in the 2 shootout chances when his guys, Brody Waters on the first one and Brett Foe on the second one, both buried it 2 in a row, put the shootout away, and the Falcons took 2 points on the weekend in the CCHA. I think they're up to 10 on the year.
Falcons undefeated in shootouts on the year. Certainly a fun note there. It's nice to see.
First game against St. Thomas, and now the second game against Michigan Tech.
Nice to see in those situations that, at least so far, they've been able to just put it away, take care of business. I think the CCHA standings right now say they're at 9 points.
9 points, yeah, because they only took. Yeah, you're right. And then the points percentage, which is how the CCHA is doing their standings this year, because Augustana does not play the same amount of games as all of the other teams in the conference. It's a points percentage, which I'm not going to explain the math to it, but they're 9 points through 6 games. That puts them at 500 in points percentage. For reference, the leader is Lake Superior State, who has 15 points, which normally would put them 4th, but because they've only played 6 games to the other 4 teams 8, they have 833 points percentage. Minnesota State's got a 750 because they have 3 more points and 2 more games played. So, yeah, that's the way that's going to work. The Falcons sit at 6th with their 500 ahead of Ferris State, St. Thomas, and Northern Michigan, and they officially have the second least amount of games played in the CCHA, tied with Lake Superior State.
And want to just look ahead because you mentioned them. One of the top 2 point percentage teams in the CCHA right now, Minnesota State, up next on the slate for the Falcons, right?
Yeah, they're good. They're so good. They just had a weekend, I believe, against Northern Michigan. I'm gonna look it up right now. They're just such a good team. They're so offensively dominant. They do a great job defensively as well. They're old. They're skilled. Alex Tracy's the best goaltender maybe in the nation, if not certainly in the CCHA. They actually had a bye week, I believe, this week. I'll look up their record right now. They have a lot of really good games played. I know Michigan is one of them that they've had. Believe they split with U of M. They had some good games against North Dakota as well. Minnesota State's certainly a formidable team. Bowling Green's going to have a tough time up in Mankato playing against Minnesota State. They did have a split series against North Dakota, who was number 6 at the time, I believe. They had a split series against U of M, who at the time was like number 2. They beat Merrimack and won a split series against them, who are a ranked team. University of Nebraska at Omaha, or just Omaha, they swept them, who was number 16 in the nation at the time. They split with Bemidji State, who's one of the better teams in the CCHA. They swept St. Thomas, who's a pretty good team in the CCHA. They did end up splitting with Northern Michigan, who's, in my opinion, the worst team in the CCHA, but then they turned around and they put a good whooping on Michigan Tech. And the next series, they had a bye this week, and now they have the Falcons and the Lakers in the next 2 weeks. They're such a good team. I think they're going to be the team to beat throughout the entire year. Like I said, their forwards are really good. They added one through the transfer portal. If you remember from last year, Luigi Benincasa from Ferris State is a huge offensive weapon. He's been added to their roster as well. So with an already good roster, they added another piece, and he's been doing pretty good this year as well. So it'll be a tough weekend for sure. If you can take points away from it, that'd be great. I'm assuming that they're going to take 2, maybe another overtime win. Forcing an overtime, taking points. You just got to take points. It's the CCHA. You can't expect to win every game, especially against one of the better teams. I think you just take the points you can and run with them. That's going to be a pretty harsh test, but I think this Falcon team can do it.
And I think it's really, and certainly give me your take on this, I think it's really inspiring optimism in the team and in the coach, which I think we've already all felt pretty positive about Willie's start here. But looking at the difference between night 1 and night 2 against Michigan Tech, I think seeing that kind of different performance Saturday was gives you a lot of optimism.
What it showed is he's not afraid to take guys out of the lineup and put guys in the lineup. Seth Fighton, Quinn Emerson, and Owen Ozar got sat the second night. They were scratched from the lineup, and Braden Krieger, Johannes Lurkerberg, and Brandon Santawana got in. They didn't end up getting points, but they had really good shifts, and that change with that entire fourth line and then the tender as well. I don't know what they put in the water that Stover was drinking, but 43 saves. I think he had 42 up into the point that he gave up the 2 goals in 20 seconds. Yeah, he was fantastic all game. It looked like he was going to have a shutout until those 2 goals in 20 seconds, and then he was unfortunately injured, but Willie's not afraid to put guys in that are going to help him win. Seth Fighton's a grad student that came back for this season. He said he believed in the guys, believed in the program and the ability of the guys to win games, and he was scratched in a game. That's a fifth year that you rarely see in any athletic event that you see such an experienced player sat, but he wasn't playing good enough shifts. Willie said, we got guys behind you that will, and he gave some younger guys a chance, and they did very well. Lerkerberg's one that's a centerman. He was a fourth-line center as a freshman, and he, being put in the lineup, he kicked Ville Imonen to the extra skater role, and he inevitably got put back in the skater role in favor of Jaden Grant. He kind of switched in that centerman position, but it shows Willie's not afraid to change things up, and that's what he had to do from one night to the next. Swing some momentum the way of the Falcons. He did it. He got 2 points in the CCHA. Probably should have got 3, but you got 2, and it was a pretty good weekend, all things together. The Falcons played pretty good defensively. Offensively, they took a step forward in the second game, which was nice to see. Better on the power play. Their special teams were a lot better in the 2 games than they were against St. Thomas. They limited the amount of penalties they had. They took everything that got thrown at them on the chin, and they turned it back around, especially in that second game, and came away with a couple points.
And it's one that seems like it's going to be the biggest test, I would think, until the new year. You look past the Minnesota State series, you've got Northern Michigan. That's 2 home games, and Northern Michigan really bottom feeding in the CCHA right now, realistically. After that, RIT, also a home matchup, December 29th, and then you go to January 3rd and 4th, Friday, Saturday, and they travel to Lake Superior State, that other team that's sitting atop the CCHA as it stands right now. So
it's a tough schedule, and there's so many teams in the CCHA that are good this year. Just looking at it, Minnesota State, Augustana, and Bemidji State are top teams, but Lake Superior State kind of came out of nowhere in my mind, and they're sitting atop right now. Don't know how long that's going to last, but that's 4 right there. Michigan Tech is a solid team, as we saw this weekend. St. Thomas is currently in the 8th slot. I think that's way too low for them. They've had a really tough schedule early. They played Michigan Tech and Minnesota State, 2 of top teams, as well as and the Lake Superior State Lakers this past weekend, in which they were handed 2 losses. That's a hot team in the Lakers, so I think St. Thomas is a better team than that spot will show. I don't know exactly how the playoffs are going to look. You're definitely looking for a home playoff series before you get to the Mason Cup. So for the Falcons, you got to be top 4, and that's a tall order because, as I said right there's 5 teams aside from the Falcons that are really good in this league. So it seems like every weekend you're going to get a tough opponent. But I think the team embraces that. They like the tough opponents. They like the adversity. You could just see that with their play on the ice and their physicality, and they're taking everything on the chin. Their penalties that they accrue, but they don't take a step back. They generate their own momentum, which is really nice to see from last year to this year. I think they have an even chance against every team in the CCHA. I said Minnesota State's really good. They are, but I think they still have an even chance of taking 3 points against the Mavericks up in Mankato. So, this Falcon team is very good. A step forward from last year. I can see them definitely making a splash. Maybe they're not going to be a top 1-2 team, but that's really hard to do in the CCHA. I think there's a couple teams vying for that spot. You get a home game, and that's a home playoff series. That's definitely a win on the season. It'll be the first time in 2 years. Great to see from the Falcons. Looking forward a lot right there, but you're 6 games in. You have a lot of games in hand, and you're still not that far behind in points. So the road is cut out.
Yeah, personally, I feel really, really optimistic, and I think that it's going to be a good barometer for the Falcons. Really the best one we'll have over the next month. This next series against Minnesota State, and 2 things, I guess. One from looking at the stats, and one from listening to your call last night. Number one, I think it's really, really good to see. I believe both of their goals yesterday in regulation came on the power play. Is that right?
They did, yes.
And something that they were not able to do the night before.
I believe they were 2 for 4 on the power play, and their penalty kill, they sat Michigan Tech down. They held them to 0 for. They were essentially, I think I said they were 5 for 7 on their special teams opportunities, and the 3 for 3 on the penalty kill, and they're 2 for 4 on the power play. That's what you want to see. Penalty kills, all effort. They showed a lot of effort, especially late in the game. Ethan Scardina took a 10-minute major and was ejected from the ice. and they had a 5-minute major to kill off in a tie game. It was 2-2, and then there was only like a minute left in the game, a minute 40 left in the game when that penalty was killed off. The Falcons went out. They killed off the entirety of the 5 minutes, in which last year I couldn't help but thinking that they would have gave up a goal based on how they played and the lack of momentum that they were able to generate. But they did a very good job of killing the power play or the penalty. We saw that from the fans in the Slater Family Ice Arena. All got on their feet toward the end of that power play like it was going to be the end of the game. That was like a momentous swing for the Falcons to have that power. They turned a penalty kill on which they were a man down, and they turned it into a forward swing and took that all the way into the shootout. Didn't lose the energy the whole time. Weren't able to beat Michigan Tech in the overtime or in the last minute or so of the regulation, but that already is a sizable improvement because they would have given up on that play last year as well. The Falcons special teams doing very well, and that's without Gustav Stjernberg and Ethan Scardina, your two best penalty killers. So great things to see from Willie and the Falcons and this weekend against Michigan Tech.
Yeah, we'll have to look forward and see what they can do against Minnesota State, notably tied for Michigan Tech with the best goals allowed count in the CCHA, only allowing 24. So,
and one of the best goaltenders in the nation as well, and Alex Tracy. He's locked down. He's a wall in the net. So it's definitely also something to look out for. If the Falcons can beat him a couple times, that's a huge win.
It'll be certainly an indicator of things to come to watch that series, and we will have the broadcast from there, I believe, because you're going to be traveling with the team. So.
Yeah, I think Falcon Radio on Friday and WBGU on Saturday. Yeah, I think that's right because women's basketball plays on Friday. So Falcon Radio on Friday, and we'll be on in Central Time instead of Eastern Time. Don't know exactly what time the game is yet, but yeah.
There you go. That'll wrap up our sports content for today. But before we go, I'm going to throw around one last question because I think there's already some good answers in mind because I know that Sean and I talked about this before. So, Sean, I'm going to let you go ahead first. I brought up what is either that you've been to or just watched, like what is the game for you, that's in your mind, ideally that you've gone to, that's like your pinnacle, sports experience or game that you've been to?
January 14th. Year of our Lord 2024, Lions 24, Rams 23, first playoff win in 32 years. It was absolute electricity. I didn't even have a ticket the day of, but I wanted to still be a part of just being down in Detroit during that. Found a ticket online for a reasonable price. I went in alone. I didn't have anyone with me, and it was just everyone around us. It was awesome. It was literally the most fun I've ever had at a game. We obviously won, so it was absolute scenes in Detroit. And after, celebrated with some West Lafayette Coney dogs. So
yeah,
can never complain about that. And maybe the next day I paid the price, but who cares?
Yeah, I don't think anybody's going to be able to top that.
No, that was absolute scenes. It was just so fun. Everyone was just amped up. It was obviously like the night game on NBC. It was so fun.
Yeah.
Well, and everyone in this room was probably screaming at their TV, except for Sean anyway. So
I cried. I will say that.
Yeah, it was just.
My roommate and I are Chad Sims. He's not listening. We had a huge bromance moment where, like, as soon as they won the game, it was a dap up. It was a hug for like 3 seconds because the Lions finally did it. Finally, a playoff game. The first one that we can recollect really in our life. Oh my gosh, it was such a game, even to watch from here in BG.
Yeah, I was gonna say wherever we were, we're all Lions fans in this room, but just wherever you were,
live it through Sean as he was at the game.
It was again absolute scenes, and it was just that like 2 to 3 week stretch of the playoffs this past year was just. It was peak. It was peak Lions fandom, and hopefully we have the same, maybe lasting a little longer this year.
Yeah,
so
here's to hoping.
We'll keep moving. Ben, Chaz, anything you
got? I have two. One's a future one, one's a past one. The Bowling Green versus U of M game last year in the Big House was very fun. I really enjoyed that game. BG didn't end up winning, but just having that first half real strong performance from the Falcons was very fun to watch. That would be mine for the best one that I've been to. I did receive word from my girlfriend that she is getting me Red Wings tickets for Christmas, and we are going to the New Year's Eve game.
Oh my goodness!
Red Wings. I don't even know who they play.
Little Caesars is always fun, so that'll be a fun game.
And that'll be my first one, and I know no matter what happens, that's going to be an electric game. Probably sitting in the nosebleeds. Don't care. I'm going to be there.
You never went to the Joe?
No.
Oh
no,
man! I hate that for you, but I'm excited that you're going to your first game.
I'm really excited for that.
The Joe is electric, though.
I know when we have Zig Zone, if we get this question after, I think that'll be number one. But we'll have to see. That should be fun.
Chaz, what you got?
This might be a homer pick, but I will say that 2022 BG Toledo game in the snow. One of the most electric experiences I've ever been to. I've never been to a Lions game, so I can't say any of the games I've actually physically been to, but I gotta say, that experience in the snow in Toledo, knocking off the Rockets, phenomenal. Matty Ice in the Hall of Fame for that play.
Oh yeah,
all-time performance there. That's definitely on my short list too. That might be my answer. I've got a couple other ones, but I also haven't made it to an NFL like a Lions game myself, and so none of them are like big games. But there's definitely like a couple games that just like come into my mind. My first Buckeyes game, they dropped 70 points on Oregon State. That was unreal. I think the first hockey game I ever went to was Anchorage at BG in around 2013-14, and they won first time in the Slater. That was sick as a 12-something-year-old.
The first Red Wings game I ever went to was a double overtime game. I don't know why they played overtime and oh no, they do play double overtime instead of shootout. I don't know. It was double overtime game. It was a lot of fun, and the Red Wings ended up winning. I think it was Larkin that put in the game winner.
Nice.
A lot of fun. Those are always extended games when you're really getting your money worth. Great.
Oh yeah,
Fantastic.
Free hockey,
Free
whatever sport you're at.
I think probably the most genuinely like fired up, engaged that I've been at games were the two Big Ten out of conference games for BG the last 2 years. Michigan last year as a fan, and then Penn State this year as a member of the band. Being down
that was
on
a
the field
fun.
at Beaver
That
Stadium
was also a fun,
and looking
fun
up
game to
at
broadcast.
the Beaver
and-
Stadium crowd was just unreal and something
I would
I'm
say
never
that's
gonna
probably
forget.
from a BG standpoint. For me, that was definitely probably one of my favorite games to just broadcast. And another little side one, I won't go on a ramble with this one. 2 years ago, I went to Augusta for the Masters, and it was absolutely electric.
I would have assumed that would have been your pick.
Yeah, I thought you were
well,
gonna
for
do
game
Mount Rushmore
for
for
game
sure.
wise, that like I wanted to say the Lions Rams, but like sporting event, that definitely is like it's 1A 1B for that. But no, the Masters was an unbelievable experience.
And
if you
all
can
the-
ever get a chance to go, please do. It was absolutely like everybody was just in a good mood. It was awesome. It
And
was
the
so
bag
fun.
you spent on gear.
The bag I spent on gear that will be disclosed. I don't want to spend it.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But yes, so if anyone has a chance to go, please do. Take the money. Do whatever. Just please go if you can.
Right, good answers, boys. That's going to do it for us. For Ben Korak, Sean Connolly, Chaz McNeil, I'm Holden Ruck. Thank you for joining us for the Zig Zone today. As always, you can engage with Falcon Media Sports Network's Bowling Green Athletics coverage on bgfalconmedia.com, as well as the BG Falcon Media YouTube channel, where you can find recaps, highlights, and rebroadcasts of our live broadcasts on both Falcon Radio and WBGU 88.1 FM. Special shout out to Lucas Kleinmeyer, our sports content director, and Tyler Kavelitz, our production director, both for all that they do and for calling in, as they are our women's and men's basketball beats. And also a shout out, as always, to Carl Smith for getting this show set up, as well as being our Falcon Media faculty advisor. That's going to do it for us for this week from the Zig Zone. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, Isaac Zumba.